I think you can go whenever you want, Stephanie.
Perfect. Hi everyone, thank you for joining. So this afternoon I'm going to go through an online brief with you all, just so you guys all know what to expect on the day of the event, things that you may need to prepare beforehand, and just so on the day you don't feel at any point like a deer in headlights for whatever reason, and everything will then run nice and smoothly. So it may seem a little bit basic, but just want to ask a few questions, and if you could flag if you are not familiar with anything that I then say, that would be great as well. You can either do that by just jumping in or just message me in the chat box, and then I'll go through any bits you're unsure of. I'm just going to let Penny in. But firstly, I just wanted to ask, are you all familiar with the mute, unmute function, turning the camera on, off, and being able to put yourself in gallery view and get your chat boxes up? Are those things you are all familiar with on Zoom? Anybody not familiar with any of those things at all?
Well, we still have this funny background noise.
Yeah, Stephanie, I don't know if it's where you are, but there's a little bit of background noise. It's probably your mic picking up people around you.
2 seconds.
Yeah, that's sorted in.
There we go.
You told them off.
Yeah. Okay. So all of you are familiar with those functions, yes? Perfect. Okay, so on the day, what will happen is, if you haven't already, you will be sent beforehand a link to what we call the green room, which is essentially the backstage element of the event day. And these links will have your allotted times on, and we would then have you join those green room links 20 minutes prior to your live times. Does that make sense to everyone? And then in those 20 minutes, we will then go over with you some of the things I'm going to cover today, and also include things such as your lighting, your framing, your audio checks, and then go through the session itself with you guys in case you have any questions and also would like to chat amongst yourselves as well. Does that make sense so far as well? Perfect. So when you come into the green room, you will more than likely be greeted by myself. I tend to run those on the day, and then what will happen is I will go through what I've just covered there and make sure all of your tech checks are up to our standard. And then what will happen is I'll ask you to bring up a chat box in your Zoom call, and then in that chat box you will receive a studio link. And that will be where you then go through to the live studio. So what will happen is you will then be asked to click on that link, and it will ask you to launch a new call, and that's fine, you do so, and then you close down that green room call that you were in once you have started up the new one. And then when you are in there, we will have a studio producer, and they will go through with you in the last 5 minutes any extras that they feel that they need to cover with you, and go over any last minute questions that you still feel that you might have, and then they will set you off live. So if you are either moderating the session, or if you are going to be somebody that is speaking solo in your session, you will have to go through something that we just call the yellow box process, and that is how we set you off live. And what will happen in the studio is the studio producer will get you to say your name twice. This only applies to the first person talking in each of those sessions. So you say your name twice, and then you'll get a thumbs up, and then the studio producer will mute themselves, take themselves off camera. They will then communicate to you via that chat box, as once you're live, the only method of communication to you guys from us is via that chat box. So it's very important that you always keep those chat boxes up, just in case we need to communicate to you at all about anything. You will receive a 30 seconds in that chat box. You will then receive a 10 seconds, and then you will see the word go. And when you see that word go in capitals, that is when you are then live on the event platform, and you are then free to introduce your session and go on through that way. Does that make sense to everyone so far? Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to move on to the PowerPoint side of things. I have been asked by Alex to just reiterate, if you do have PowerPoints that you are wanting to use in the event, please make sure you get them sent over by 12 p.m. on Friday, if that's okay, so we can then get those uploaded into our system. And on the day, in terms of PowerPoints, what will happen is you will see an extra box, which is like the same size as what we are all in now, and it will say studio feed. And when you request your PowerPoint, you just say, can you bring up my PowerPoint, please? That studio feed will then turn into the first slide of your PowerPoint, which you will then see. In order to make this image larger, all you need to do is hover over that studio feed box, right click, and then pin it, and then it will cover the whole screen for you. If you would like, you can also have your PowerPoint printed out or have it on a separate desktop or laptop, different screen. It's entirely down to you and your personal preference as to how you would like to read from your PowerPoint, but having that on your Zoom call and pinning it is an option for you. Does that make sense? Perfect. And then in order to navigate your way through those, you just need to say next slide, so on and so forth. If you do not have a PowerPoint, then you do not need to worry about any of what I have just said in terms of that. It will just be a case of it either being a panel discussion and Q&A. In terms of the Q&A, it will be a case of somebody having the event platform up and pulling those questions from that platform and feeding them into that chat box on your Zoom call. So again, that's why it's important to keep that chat box open, and those questions will be solely going to the moderator or facilitator of each session. And then the rest of the panel will then hear those questions once that moderator or facilitator reads them out. Is that clear to everybody? Perfect. So do any of you have any questions about anything I have covered so far, or does that all make sense? I know it's a lot of information, and I know a lot of you have probably done a lot of this before, so do just butt in if you do want to comment on anything at all.
Just a very quick thing before we go to questions. So as Stephanie said, someone will be there to drop the questions from the audience to the panel moderator. That will be me. So I will be sitting in the room with all panelists, but hiding. And so I will be liaising with Tarquin, for example, because you're chairing one of the sessions. And for the links, sorry, that was a thing I wanted to mention. So I'll get them shortly. So the link for the green room, and I will send you that in a calendar invite. So then you'll have it in your calendar together with the link and the exact description of how you join that. It's very simple, but just to remind you the order and where to click, how to click.
Is anybody on the call planning to use virtual backgrounds at all, or are you all just going to be sort of using your own rooms and the background in there?
Hi, this is Penny James. So yes, I was planning to use a virtual background.
Do you have? Do you? Yeah, that's fine. Do you know how to put that onto Zoom and everything? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So then in terms of the day itself, like I said, it's just a case of joining the green room 20 minutes earlier, going through the tech checks that we need to go through then, and then talking through your session if you'd like to. You will then go through to the studio room via that chat box, meet the studio producer there, and then be given the instructions to then set off live. In terms of when you are live, it's just a good thing to note that we will be going between group shots and single shots if you are on a panel discussion. So just be aware that you could be on camera even if you are not speaking. So it's not a good idea to sort of at any point while you're live just kind of get up, go to the toilet, get a drink, anything like that. We do want to emphasize that you know, should just be aware that you could be on camera at any time. So please remain engaged. It's just a lot nicer for the audience's point of view. And then when you are speaking, of course, it's just about really common sense as to when to mute and unmute. Obviously, we can control what we can tech-wise, but if somebody knocks on the door, your house phone rings, a dog starts barking, these are all very normal things that are happening, especially with everybody working from home. So it's just a case of moving through that as naturally as possible. Or if you aren't speaking at that exact moment, just pop yourself on mute. It's not a problem at all. And of course, if it's conversational, remain off mute. But if somebody else is speaking for a sustained period of time, pop yourself on mute, and so on and so forth. When it comes to the end of a session, am I correct in thinking that, for example, it's Toby who will be opening and closing the first lot on the first day?
Yeah, so there will be a one nucleus person. So that would be either Tony, Alicia who is on the call, or myself. So popping in when it's the end of the session to just do a wrap up. Thank you for panelists, and similarly with just introducing. So that gives an indication of when you're supposed to stop.
Yeah, perfect. So you don't need to worry about closing those sessions either. So when it does come to an end, Tony will then come in, wrap up that session, and then the studio producer will then pop back in and say, okay, guys, you are no longer live, you are clear. Thank you very much. And it'll just be a case of then exiting the call for us to then get the next lot through for the next session. So that is everything on my end. It's just a good thing to note, we will have graphics for you guys. So when you are doing those introductions, just be aware that we are going to be playing your names with your lower thirds and titles on. They will be appearing throughout. So just be mindful that that is the case. So you don't need to keep reintroducing. We will be doing that for you visually. But yeah, that's all from me, unless anybody has any other questions at all. Nope. Okay, perfect. Well, thanks everybody so much for joining.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And
Bye.